My name's Nimai Hedemark, and I'm joined today by my good friend Leo. Today we're going to be exploring the concept of faith within the context of Jyotish, Vedic Astrology. And I think that given the context of the time that we're in, it's a very interesting study. And generally, you kind of, you think of the start of Vedic astrology with the ascendant. We tend to think of the beginning as the ascendant. But a little bit deeper, you find that the beginning is actually the 12th house. So if you want to start from the beginning, which is usually the best place to start from, you have to start with exploring the 12th house. So let's get started. So I first and foremost, I have to offer my respect to my teachers. Everything I have, I've been given, and I owe a great debt of gratitude to my teachers, both of my spiritual practices and also my Jyotish. So first of all, I'd like to offer my respect to my teacher, Visti Larsen. He's always been incredibly kind, tolerant, and very giving with both his time and his knowledge. I'm very much indebted to him. I would also like to thank Sanjay Rath, my teacher's teacher, my Paramaguru, for being generous enough and kind enough to go outside the bounds of tradition and to teach this vast knowledge to white people like me, which wasn't done before. So without further ado, Om Gurave Namaha. Krishna makes this incredible statement in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Sattvanurupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata. Shraddha yo yam purusho yo yat shraddha sa eva sa. And when I saw this, I was blown away because this is straight Jyotish. He says, the faith of each of us is in accordance with his nature, O descendant of Bharata. The man consists of his faith. As a man's faith is, so is he. Now, if we look at the Sanskrit, I'm going to put a little bit of, there's a few things that we need to play with here, because I looked at about 16 translations. This translation comes from Shivananda Swami. And it was the translation that kind of captured as much of the meaning as I could find that I can see in the Sanskrit, and yet it's so general in some ways that we lose something. So this key word here is this Sattvanurupa. He says, Sattvanurupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata. This bhavati is to manifest. So everyone, sarvasya, is manifesting shraddha according to their Sattvanurupa. So when we look at this Sattvanurupa, we can say, this anurupa means that it in accordance with. In accordance. So you could say in accordance with their sattva, right? So we can take one meaning, we can take sattva as a guna, as sattva. According to your enlightenment, you're being situated in sattva. You'll manifest faith. Or you could say sattva of the individual is his own inherent truth. It's his existence. So according to his own existence, he manifests faith, right? And then the other thing that you need to notice, or that I notice, is that when you talk about sattva, the gunas, they're interacting through the mind. The mind is the one that's interacting with the gunas. The mind is the filter by which the soul, the self, the Atma, is viewing and interacting with the world. So anytime we're talking about gunas, we have to acknowledge that we're talking about the mind. So you could say the faith of each is in accordance with the nature of his mind, O descendant of Bharata. The second part is quite amazing. So he says, Shraddha Mayo Yam Purusho. So this Purusho is, here it's being translated to man, but we have to be we're going to be a little more specific. We have this concept of Purusha and Prakriti, or the enjoyer and the enjoyed, and how the supreme absolute, the supreme being is the Purusha, and that his whole, everything that's manifesting from him is Prakriti, and he's engaging with Prakriti. So here what's being acknowledged is that the individual conscious perceiver is the Purusha. It's more than man, it's the conscious perceiver. Consists of his faith. And his faith, he certainly is. Sa evam sa. Right? So going back to this sattvanurupa, this concept that the sattva, the gunas are, they're being interacted with from the point of the mind. And that this mind is then manifesting, the quality of the mind is then manifesting the existence according to the nature of his faith. We're going to explore this. This is a very direct 12th house concept, because the 12th house precedes the lagna. The 12th house is the before you were. It is the place from which you came. It was the end of your previous existence and the beginning of of this one. It will be the end of this one and the beginning of the next. It's the beginning and the end, right? So everything is entering into the chart from the 12th. And you'll notice that if you were to map the Vargas to the houses, that the 12th house is the point in which the D60 chart, or the Shastyamsa, it's the interaction point between those two charts. And when you study Bala, you'll find that the D60 chart, especially in Vimshapaka Bala, although the details are irrelevant at this point, that the D60 is given the most weight. It is the weight of all your previous existence. And before that, its existence, it's implied that its existence beyond this existence as well. When we look at the meanings of Pisces, right? You're looking at Pisces. And for the rest of this duration of this conversation, we should probably make a little, what would be the word? An addendum. That sometimes I'm going to refer to the 12th house, and sometimes I'm going to refer to Pisces, and sometimes I'm going to mix the two things up. Or I'll give information about the 12th house that more or less sounds like I'm talking about Pisces. And that's because from the very start, we're going to look at things from what's called the natural zodiac, which looks at the zodiac starting from Aries. So the houses and the signs, they map together perfectly. So when we look at Pisces, Pisces is, it is the causal, in the truest sense of the word, it is the causal ocean. It is the place where Mahavishnu is resting on the Sheshanaga. It is the beginning and the end. So, this becomes true very much in the study of the Rashi. And no study, you can't really understand what's going on unless you study the 12th, because the person was formed in the 12th before the Lagna even happened.
And so in a way, Nimai, based on what you were saying a minute ago, that Purusha, that original being can be the translation of that word as well. So it's almost as if our little mortal lives in a way, but a resemblance of what Vishnu does originally. He's in that 12th house resting, and then from that restful place of the 12th house, everything manifests.
And you're also seeing that the highest sattva, right? The sattvanurupa sattva, according to his sattva. So the highest truth is that supreme Purusha. That is existence itself as it is. And all of us are actually tiny, infinitesimal projections of that supreme self who's sitting in his yoga nidra. And he, even in that, if we take that, that image, right? You have Mahavishnu resting in the causal oceans on the Shesha of infinity, right? Ananta Shesha is the Naga, the infinite time, you could even say. But it's more like infinite existence. And from him is born Brahma, the creative mind. Brahma is the embodied creative mind of Mahavishnu. Then Mahavishnu, he glances at the Mahat. Well, actually, I've missed one step. Let's start that over. From Mahavishnu, he glances at the Mahat, the totality of the conglomerate material, which is actually himself. And he impregnates it with Shiva, with consciousness. Shiva is that conscious awareness, that focal point. And he activates it. And then he enters into that activated space as Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And from Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Brahma is emerging on the lotus. And he is the creative mind of Vishnu, embodied. So even there, we're seeing that the mind is creating the reality. And Krishna is alluding to this here.
That's the most amazing part of all this video you're presenting now, is how this cosmic reality, this transcendental reality, which originates from those original beings, plays out in our infinitesimal realities day to day. And that's the part that I find just most amazing, how you're going to guide us through this step, how this works. And
we also have to acknowledge that we'll see that the connection, the 12th house is the seat of the rishis, right? The forefathers and the seers of the truth, they're also there at the 12th house. So in every way from metaphysical to physical, our origin is the 12th house.
Excellent.
So as a quick introduction, I probably have to introduce you and others to this Rashi format. Most people are more familiar with the North Indian and the South Indian charts. This is the chart used in my tradition, and it's called the East Indian chakra, or the Guru chakra. So it functions a little bit like a combination of the two, the North Indian and the East Indian. So for a little reference point, we're going to get the Lagna there. So now we know. Now, just like the South Indian chart, the East Indian chart is fixed. The Rashis don't move. So this is always Aries. This is always Libra. This is always Capricorn. And this is always Cancer. So you might have noticed that rather than moving clockwise, the way the South Indian chart works, it moves in reverse the way the North Indian chart works.
North Indian chart, yeah.
And what you get is a kind of a best of both worlds. The South Indian chart is based on these squares and the up and down diagonal lines, these vertical and diagonal lines. And it is I'm pretty sure it's right side brain. It has to do with the two hemispheres. So this is logic. This is the logical part of your brain. Things are up and down and side to side. And it works very well for making people who have a calculative mind, who are very into the calculation part. You'll often find they work well with the South Indian chart. Then there's the other part of your brain. The other hemisphere of your brain is intuitive, and it has a visual. It takes a visual cue, and then it intuits information. And that is the side to side, these diagonal lines that you see all through the diamond chart, the North Indian. So you you get a best of both worlds by having the two kind. And you'll notice that on principle, the East Indian is never enclosed. It is the boundless space that we're looking at, with the boundless space in the middle. So in our tradition, we accept this chakra to be perfect. And I was told that if you master this, your Jyotish will start to improve very quickly. And I certainly found that to be true. I would consider the adoption of the East Indian chart to be one of the most important things that my teacher gave to me. So now,
so it's very interesting, because you would think that perfect Jyotishi is that one who masters that rational side with the intuitive side, and both seem to be reflected in that chart.
You need the intuitive side to make very rapid. There's so many calculations that have to be made. There are so many looking points. There are so much information that has to be processed, and it needs to be processed relatively quick. So you are very much dependent on your intuition to get you to a starting point on some levels. Once you have enough of a framework to know what you're looking for, that you can spot, you should be able to spot something that looks out of place, that looks like, ooh, I should look at that. So you need this intuition to work very, very fast. And then combine that with technical framework, groundwork, that you can do those calculations or you can do those things. So this chakra, it is the best marriage of those two. I absolutely love it, and that's the reason I'm not going to use a different chakra. We're just gonna pray that everyone forgives me for introducing a different medium, but that's I hope it helps everyone. It certainly helped me. So the starting point that we're looking for faith is the 12th house itself. This faith, this idea of faith, it's a feeling. Faith is a feeling. And that's part of why it's part of this water trine. It's something that is, you have it, but you can't necessarily explain why. This 12th house is like, it's that area of life that's somewhat foreign or a mystery to you. It's somewhat hidden from you, but it's there. It's that unexplainable, intangible, unconscious, but it sits within you and you can't quite figure it out. Now,
interesting, because it links. So you just reminded me of what you mentioned at the beginning when you're saying that house is the link to the D60, which has all these many lives and impressions, and you're just not aware of them, and we're not aware of them, and yet they're all there, causing these untangible, unconscious.
And I want to make sure that I'm very clear that we say faith at this point in time, it can be any belief. It is any belief that whether you're a atheist, that's a belief system, or you are a theist, or the various kinds of theists, or a humanist, however, whatever your faith is, Krishna makes that distinction. He says all men have faith. He doesn't say some men have faith. He says all men have faith, and verily they are their faith, and their faith they are, right? So what we're going to do is, to begin with, we are going to map the houses, and we're going to describe the houses and the characteristics of the houses in relation to faith. And then we're going to show how these houses are a little bit interacting, to point out that in Jyotish, it's not so simple. That actually you can't say, okay, faith is 12th house, so we're going to look at the 12th house and we're going to get all the information about faith from the 12th house. Actually, the whole chart has something to say about faith, just like the whole chart has something to say about fame, or the whole chart has something to say about romance. That every house is interacting with every house. This is a principle called Argala. And we're going to be exploring how the houses are interacting with each other and impacting each other in regards to our faith. And then ultimately, this is going to be the manifestation of our life. So the Kendra are the first place. The Kendra, the 4 houses of Kendra are the 1, 4, 7, and 10. And we tend to think of the Kendra from the Lagna, but we can use the same principle from any place. And these 4 houses, they act like 4 legs of a chair. 4 of a chair. Well, it does work that way, but you generally get told like a table. But they're working together to create stability. And generally, there's a physical manifestation involved. So when we look at the Lagna, it's our body, our home, our relationships, and then ultimately our interaction with the world. And in every case, this is very much manifesting externally. And it's very much related to us. Now, and in this case, it's upholding our body, our intelligence, so on and so forth. Now, from the perspective of faith, we're going to see that these 4 houses are extremely pivotal. And we're going to be able to show why. So the first one is the 9th house, the 10th house from the 12th. And here I've labeled it as religious practice or your religious inheritance. This 9th house is the place where belief is given structure. You can have this you don't really know, you have some vague concept in the 12th. You have these beliefs, or like people say, oh, I'm spiritual. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. But without a framework, it's hard to translate these beliefs into action. And then the foundation, the whole Kendra is you could say weak. We have to be able to turn our faith into action. And in order to do that, we need to have a structure. And so if the structure is somehow compromised, that also will cause some problems, and we'll see that. But so the 9th house, that's also where you go to the guru, the teacher.
Nimai, sorry to interrupt, just to make sure
Sure.
I'm following you before we go on. So now you're counting those same quadrants, those same Kendras, yep. Instead of from the Lagna house, you're starting
counting it from the 12th house itself.
Counting clockwise, exactly. From that.
Because now we are going to be looking at the chart, everything in relation to the 12th house.
Correct.
Right? So if you were to look at the idea of Kendrabala, or which houses are strong, which Kendras are stronger, the 10th is the strongest. I might have that mixed up, but I believe I've gone in the right order. The 1st, the 10th, then the 4th. The heart of it, you're going to see, the heart of faith is what you do. You can say you believe in this and you believe in that, but what does it translate? What do you do? Right? You say that I've surrendered unto God, but will you let go of your ego at death? Will you give it to him? Right? What you believe in should translate in action. This is the heart of what you believe. So what you really believe is shown in the 3rd house.
Also what you were saying, if you have faith that really life is just about working hard, and that's what's going to...
That's it. And it'll be represented.
That should be showing in that house.
What you do.
Effort.
So this house becomes very pivotal. The 4th from the 12th house. This house is so important. So if we were looking, like if we were taking it from the Lagna, right? The 4th house is your heart. The 4th house is actually the beginning of this moksha trine. You're trying to find peace within yourself. Everything, the heart of this whole process is here. So in the same sense, from the perspective of faith, the heart of the whole process is here in the 3rd house. And later on, when we see some more words from Krishna, we're going to see how pivotal this 3rd house is. Of course, the last Kendra is another pivotal house. It's the 6th house of internal weakness, right? The Shad Ripus, these 6 enemies. that begin and that begin with mada, or this idea of delusion, intoxication of pride, that you become intoxicated by a false conception, right? Intoxicated by a false conception. And it is born of the ego. So these 6 enemies, and I should probably reference this real quick. I always forget the exact. We can go back to that.
Source of the,
Yeah.
So
Now,
two points. Sorry, before you move on. So you're saying that that faith obviously is based on the effort, that 4th house from the 12th.
well, it's not based on the effort, but the 4th house, you could say the faith is it's being put into, you are getting a real sense of what it is through the 3rd house. Whatever your faith is, you can say, people can say whatever they want to say, but they vote with their feet.
Correct.
You know?
Correct.
So,
but also then with the weaknesses, you're saying it's not just one weakness.
there's 6.
There's 6 of them. Yeah.
They're called the Shadripus, the 6 enemies. Why don't we have a quick? I'm gonna find them real quickly for us. So we have the exact ones. I always let me just find it for us. How do I do this? Let's just here. Oof.
I wonder if this is something that came through Bali Maharaj or.
So the 6 enemies are lust, kama, anger, krodha, greed, lobha, fascination, moha, pride, mada, or this ego, which also call it delusion, and jealousy, matsarya. And we could do a whole, pretty much a whole class on those because they do map to specific planets.
Find the Mada one that you called fascination, being under the influence of a strong emotion, which is interesting. Well, that's what fascination would be. It's whatever that emotion is. But
you would use that kind of that one is moha. Moha is this like when you become enamored by something and you've been obsessed.
But it's like a confusion, is it?
Yes. So where were we? We're at the 6 enemies. So now this form just to make sure, are you seeing my screen? Have I stopped sharing?
Yeah, no, I've got you now. I'm not seeing the screen so far.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
The chart that we had before.
So let me just share that screen again. Okay. Screen is back?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. So these are the Kendras. These are the 4 very, very principal houses. Now we will look at the trine. Now a trinal concept is that the trinal houses, they link together. They have a kind of union. It's almost yoked together. And the very easy way to understand this is the past, present, and future. The past, present, and future are intimately tied together. The past and the now are already linked, and the now and the future are already linked because of the past. You can go round and round that way, right? So if we look at from the Lagna, let me get my pointer again. If we look at it from the Lagna, this is our now, right?
Correct.
And we've come to our now, we're living our now based on our past. Everything this is the house of our purva punya, from our previous good activities, our previous expression of dharma has come from this. So this, you can say this is our past. And it's manifesting now, and we're looking towards the future. Here, this is our future. This is our good fortune that's coming. both from the past and the now. So in the same way,
Correct.
these, the trinal houses from the 12th, they're tied together in a very intimate way. So
Yeah. The
the 8th house of, so this is our pop. This is our suffering. This is where the very, all our, the results of our previous actions where we have let go of Dharma, right? When we let go of Dharma, we suffer. Or we have debts. You can think of it as debt as well. This is your debts, your karmic debts. And they, in the same way, link. This is our past or the immediate past, but it comes from a deeper past. But actually it goes the other way around. We have to save from the 4th because we'll add that too. So the 4th house, we have, call it here purity and peace. It's really your heart. Okay? And purity is how covered over you are by this ahankara, and how dirty, how covered, how sticky are the actions, all the karmas, right? And all the attitudes and vasanas and all these things. How covered over is that heart? And and that covering causes our motivations, are like conscious or very close motivations. It colors them deeply. You'll see that the 3rd from the 4th is this house of weakness, right?
2, 3, yeah.
So our 3rd from the 4th is this house of the 6th house of weakness.
So to whatever degree we're gripped by those weaknesses, then to that degree we'll have that purity covered or not.
Yep, and that we'll have some struggle here that we'll have to deal with. That could manifest in this life as some kind of illness or conflict. All the conflict that we experience in life, both physically and externally, is a manifestation on some level of our own internal weakness. That is actually a manifestation of our purity of heart, which is rooted in ahankara, actually. Both of these houses, they sit and they circle the 5th. They're interacting directly the 5th. This 5th house is the natural house of the sun. And it is the seat of ego. This is where you project yourself. This is where you create your future. This is what it's the 3rd from the 3rd. So we're talking about how actions we're putting into but this 3rd from the 3rd is the 5th. So it's the natural seat of the sun. It's the seat of the ego. The fruit of the ego is internal weaknesses. And when we give up the ego, we become pure. Right? Next, so this trine is intimately linked together. Next, we have pairs of houses. I could put it that way. I think that's how I've done it. We have, what do I have here? So we have pairs of houses that are the immediate. These are have immediate interaction. The lagna, your own intellect, is interacting with your faith, and your faith is interacting. It's interacting and limiting, actually, your lagna. And your faith is being limited or obstructed. Well, maybe I'm actually skipping a few steps. So let's just continue to show what the houses are, describe the indications, and then we'll go through how they interact. I'm skipping to the interaction.
Right.
So here I'm labeling the 11th house as Sangha. This is your friend. This is your friend's circle. And this is the flow of the fulfillment of desires. This is the natural Aquarius. This is where you're either getting what you want or you don't get what you want. And all of it is the fruit of desire. So both of those concepts, they have a strong implication in regards to faith. The external and the internal, they are both interacting. Whereas sometimes the external is not as significant. Like, I mean, we could talk about brothers and sisters and siblings and things like that here in regards to faith, but it's not as apparent, the connection, as self-effort itself. Whereas with the 11th house, Sangha and desire are both very important concepts and strongly impact this 12th house. It becomes a very, very strong, you could call it a bottleneck. So the next pair of houses we get is the 2nd house of wealth and the 10th house, the interaction with the world. Both of these, they're interacting together with faith. The last two, we've got interaction with others. And the 5th house, I've labeled the pursuit of knowledge, but I could have just as easily labeled this your personal practice. So we have here this religious practice and inheritance. You could call this your spiritual practice, or you could call this this is your personal practice in the space of your own home. Here in the 9th house, you go to the temple, you could say, or you go to the house of your guru. And here in the 5th, you're practicing it in your own space. This is your own pursuit, third from the 3rd, right? And this pursuit of knowledge is the key to overcoming ego, the 5th house, right?
Interesting.
So now we've defined what these houses are in relation to faith. And now we can talk a little bit about how they interact with each other. Now, the Argala concept is I'm not going to go into it in detail. I'm not actually trying to teach Argala per se, but we have this idea of Argala, or like the idea that something that sustains or that it's positive for. But let's use the idea of sustenance. This Argala is very easy to understand when you just look at this 12th, the Lagna, and the 2nd. The 12th house concept is...
Nimai, you mentioned before Argala was how the different houses interacted with each other.
Yes, this is Argala. Argala is how the houses interact with each other, and how they interact by either being a source of sustenance or a source of obstruction. Okay, so you have these two words, Argala and Viroda, that they're sustaining or they're obstructing. But we have to be a little bit careful of how we play with the definitions, because obstruction always sounds like a negative. But what we're going to find is a picture that's much more complex than that. So the Argalas, we can just teach the very, very basic principle of Argala, 2nd house, versus Viroda, 12th house, okay, in relation to Lagna. And the easiest way to teach this and to understand this is if we use food as the medium. The 2nd house is where you store food, and that food sustains you, right?
Yeah.
The 12th house is where the food is lost, or your energy is lost. You've eaten the food and it's sustaining you, but you've lost the energy, so now you need food to sustain you. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
Here there's a resource, and here there's an expenditure that's requiring some effort to gain. Okay?
Yeah, correct.
That is the basic and fundamental principle. So, starting from the 12th house, the immediate impact is, I've given two. The immediate sustainer is the Lagna itself, your own intellect. Your intellect, and what Krishna is even saying, you yourself become the manifestation of your faith. And here is the first clue that this is exactly what's happening. You, your own body is a manifest. Everything about you is a product of your faith, but is also sustaining your faith.
Correct.
Okay.
In the same way that wealth is sustaining the lagna,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
lagna, that intellect is sustaining that faith.
Yep. Now, the obstacle that's competing with the lagna is sangha and desire fulfillment. So you're, like this, like we see in the Ramayana, we have the character Mandara. Mandara, she speaks the words into Kaikeyi's, and then Kaikeyi goes, oh, no, we have to banish Ram, right? She loses faith. It's actually just like this. And so this sangha, your friend circle, your friends who you keep company with, they're going to influence what you think. They're going to try and have an influence on the decisions you make. Right? Here in the lagna, we have what's called buddhi. It's not functional intelligence, but this buddhi is the final discernment when the self is saying yes or no, yes, no, yes, no. Someone who has a strong buddhi gets the yes and no right more than he doesn't. Right? So the sangha is trying to influence. So you have good sangha, this is very good for faith. And if you have bad sangha, it's very bad for faith. It becomes a limiting factor. Same, the intensity of your desire and the fulfillment of your desire even. People who are, I'll skip, I won't go there because we're going to go there later in this presentation. But this interaction with desire can give you faith or can be an obstructor to faith. And you're going to find, I've labeled them all with an O for obstruction, but I kind of think impact is a better word. It impacts. It can impact positively or it can impact negatively, but there's going to be an impact.
When you gave the example about the food, somehow what I related it to was almost like a financial analogy of the house that's right next, going clockwise.
Yeah, you can do it exactly the same. You can do it with money. You can say money. You can say here's the money where you save the money, and here's where you spend the money.
Correct, but that investment can end up being a liability,
exactly, or it can be positive.
Ends up being correct,
right? Because the second house is the lagna. In both cases, it's the lagna.
Yeah.
So, what you spend can be good for you, and what you save might not be good for you.
Yeah, true.
Right? So we want to be careful that we don't jump to a conclusion that, oh, all the sustenance houses are good and these impact houses, these obstruction houses are bad. It's not that basic. Okay? So then the next pair is the 10th house as a sustainer. Right? Your interactions with the world are trying to sustain your faith, trying to sustain what you believe in. Right? And they're going to be in direct opposition to this second house. Now, this second house, it's the third from faith. And the third house can either be an obstruction or a sustainer. This is really important.
Okay.
Generally, negative planets in that place sustain, and positive obstructs. And it's going to be very interesting later on when we go and see the description that Krishna gives. You're going to see this play out. This becomes very important. So, for example, you don't see a lot of like extremely religious, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say that you don't see a lot of extremely religious, wealthy people, but that's not true. But oftentimes, those people who are doing very well in the material world, and they have they're no lack. They are not so committed to the search.
An opulent surrounding, opulent circumstances.
Yeah, can be an obstruction or a limiting factor. And it can be, either way it's impactful. So this house is very important, and it'll interact. It has a direct interaction here, how you interact with the world. So each of these pairs, they interact with each other as well as the 12th house. We have to make sure that we understand that. So the next pair is very obvious. We've touched on it already when we were talking about the Kendra, and that is the self-effort versus the religious practice or religious inheritance, or you could say the guru. Are you acting just on your own initiative, out of your own, you could say, speculation, or your own, you're winging it, you're flying your own plane, or are you looking to the wisdom of the past?
Yeah, I see
Now,
these chart, just that recent S and O that you've added there, Nimai. When you see, like, what came to my mind is if your self-effort that you're applying is actually in line with what that guru has taught you, then that's like you really have made your own. Those teachings have had an impact on you such that they have become your own, and therefore there is a sustenance for your faith.
Yeah,
makes perfect sense. Where I don't quite see it as the other way around.
Yeah. So we'll keep
I'll let you
the
finish.
charts, and then we're gonna go back to this because this is very important. What you're saying is it's at the heart of what I was trying to allude to when you're looking at this idea of obstruction. So the next pair we have is the purity and peace, your heart, right? And it's directly opposite suffering. Now this is a very important one because look, this is part of this moksha trine. This is the two legs of that moksha trine. And this suffering is the impact. This piece is the resource that you have. You either have it or you don't, truly. And if you don't have it, you're going to have to somehow get it. And then that's a whole nother thing, right? But initially, you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And this is where you're going to either pay for it or you don't. And this one is directly, so these are married together.
Interesting to think that it's
and when you
easier
very
for all of
easy
us to be at peaceful and be peaceful when we're not suffering.
Yep.
But when we're suffering, if someone is suffering and they can be at peace, then that speaks about their self-realization, really how much faith they've got. And then again, we go back to that 12th house.
Yeah, and you're going to find that you could say that too much suffering will give people doubt, right? And not enough suffering will also cause another kind of impact.
True.
Because they're not suffering. What do they need to think? Life is good. Why am I concerned with this idea of what is moksha? What is myself? I have no interest in any of these things. I'm interested in, women and
the 11th house, the Sakha, the desire fulfillment. That's all.
Oh, yes, that's it. So this suffering is a very special situation, and it's deeply impactful, right? Then we have the last pair, which is our interactions with others and our pursuit of knowledge, our own spiritual practice. Okay? Now these two, they are directly impacting each other. And really, this house is impacting this house. So generally speaking, you could say that the obstructor is impacting the other one more than the other way around, but there is a certain degree of back and forth. This house is trying to reduce the impact that this one is having, and this one is trying to impact that one or that one. And this is very significant because actually, if you have knowledge, it should reflect in how you're interacting with others. You can't say that you're a self-realized soul and treat everyone like garbage. It is not how it works. If you are a self-realized soul, if you have pursued knowledge, it will directly impact on how you see everyone. Krishna says, the self-realized soul sees with equal vision, right? Equal vision. The dog eater, the brahmana, the elephant, the outcast. So he has this knowledge, so it impacts others. And these two houses, they have this relationship to here. Now, the last house that we haven't marked is this internal weaknesses house. And this house is very special in that it is kind of the key to the whole thing. It's the gateway to this whole thing. You're gonna discover your faith, really, when you discover that you have a problem here. And until you discover that you have a problem and recognize that you have a problem here, you're so deluded by ego, then you have no faith. And
so you're telling us that this is the key, that sixth house is the key.
The sixth house. And watch, the 10th from the sixth house is the third house. Oh, wait a second, right? You've already decided to talk that this third house, how important is this third house? This third house is directly the 10th from the sixth house. So this sixth house, you can't really call it an obstructor. It's a little bit like the second. It's both an obstructor and a sustainer. Okay. So now that we have some general idea of how the charts interacting together, let's go a step further and let's see exactly what Krishna says on this topic. We started with the Bhagavad Gita. Let's continue with Bhagavad Gita. What's going on? My computer is frozen. Whoops, we've gone way.
I still have your image and the chat. Yep. Ooh, okay.
We've gone way back. Let's go to here. Sorry, everyone. Technical. Nope. Next one. Now, I found this incredible. To be honest, this jazzed me so much when I discovered this. So we've gone through and we've looked at, we should go back 1 second. It'll make more sense. We'll go back 1 second. So, okay. So take a notice. Let's just take notice that the sustainers for the most part are the Kendra to Lagna. We have 1, 4, 7, and 10. Oh my God. Right? Krishna said just before that by faith, that according to one's nature, he has faith. And that faith that he has, he manifests. So here are the houses of manifestation. And they're the ones that are sustaining. And they're the ones that are dependent on a resource. This is going to be really important. So initially, if we just take this idea of sustaining obstruction, we're going to think that these houses are the good ones. And they are, but it's a little more, right? So take note of that. And then we have the third house. That's the other one.
Okay.
Okay. Then all the other houses, we have the 2nd, the 11th, the 5th, the 8th, and the 9th. And we'll go to the next slide.
Interesting that, yeah.
So
sorry, in my mind, I immediately saw all those O's as elements that could lead. They're amazing. They're sustainers. It's like they're not a bad house. They're not a bad element at all. At all. They can be absolutely uplifting. And yet, for me, I kind of almost saw already all those houses as elements that when you have some of that, it can be a gate to be an obstruction. Like
so look at
in your way of,
on that note. Now I do have to point out a slight mistake. This isn't the 12th house Kendra. This is actually Lagna Kendra that supports the 12th house.
Correct.
But in the 7th chapter, Krishna, he goes into, he says, Namam duskritino mudha prapadyante naradama mayaya prita jnana asuram bhavam ashrita. 4 kinds of people do not surrender unto me. Those ignorant of knowledge, those who lazily follow their lower nature, though capable of knowing me, those with deluded intellect, and those with a demoniac nature. Now, we'll go one by one. And what we're going to notice is that each of these map to one of those 4 houses. And that when there is a lack in one of those 4 houses, it manifests as one of these kind of people. And there is no sustenance to this faith. Right? No sustenance to this faith. So these houses actually become, that you can see how important they are, and how when there's a weakness there, it's a serious problem. When there's a weakness in the other houses, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no faith. It just slows down the process by which you evolve. But when we have a problem with these 4 houses, that turns into a serious problem. And these people will not turn to the absolute truth. So the first kind of person he says is mudha. This word mudha is a very interesting word. Mu, you could break it up in mu and dha. Mu literally means to move towards, and dha means to carry. So a mudha is someone who's so foolish, he's misusing his efforts. The example that Srila Prabhupada always used was like a donkey. You put a little carrot in front of a donkey, or a little bit of grass, and you just dangle it. You dangle it in front of the donkey, and the donkey all day, he'll work so hard trying to get this carrot or this little bit of grass. But the whole time he's surrounded by grass. So when the person is missing siddhi, he's missing the ability to perfect his, he can't perfect his life. And so he's grossly misusing his effort.
Yeah.
Right? In every case, we're going to see that effort is misused in one way or another. It's always going to come down to effort. So this one, he's not working.
The 6 from the 10th, is it?
Yeah, the 6 from the 10th is how he works. And he's not working in a way that is actually helping. He's not benefiting him. He's wasting his time. He's toiling over some material gain, toiling, never looking over here to the 8th from the 5th house. So he's grossly foolish. He's a mudha. He's lacking. He has no knowledge, nor does he have instruction. Mudha. So he cannot be siddhi. He can't have siddhi. This is the resource of the 10th
category. Those ignorant of knowledge. Is that mudha?
No, it is technically ignorant of knowledge. Mudha. It's like Srila Prabhupada would use the word, he's like an ass-like person, like a donkey. You're like a donkey. Yeah. You're just like and we have a word in Sanskrit, a pashu. Technically, all of these people we will find are pashus, but this one represents this beast of burden, right? The next kind of person he says is the naradama. And we have 2 words here, nara, adama. Now, the resource of the 4th house is called shuddhi, your cleanliness, your internal purity, which we've said here. I've even said it in the name, shuddhi. So when you have no shuddhi, it means that a naradama, he's casting himself into darkness. Adama means like the lowest position. You're like a low. He's a human being. He's taken a human form. He's a nara, but he's misusing his human form of life to act like an animal. Another kind of pashu. He's acting like an animal. Why? Because he's only engaged in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. He also is lacking in knowledge. He has no knowledge because he has not surrendered to the guru. He has not surrendered to higher wisdom. This is the 6 from there. It's a challenge, right? He doesn't have it. Instead, he's falling. And what is his future? 8th house suffering. Right? The next kind of person Krishna describes is this mayaya apritagyana. Now, this is a lack of buddhi. Mayaya apahrita jnana means, apahrita means like captured, like when something is like you've been abducted, apahrita. So he's saying that his jnana has been abducted by Maya, which means that the person is accepting reality as it is, the mundane, or I should say physical reality, to be reality. He won't accept this realm of the unknown. He says, no, I'm dealing with reality. So because he's actually misidentified his self, the lagna. He doesn't understand what his self is. Then he can't actually identify what anything else is. And therefore, all of his knowledge, all of what he thinks he knows has been stolen by Maya, by illusion.
Interestingly, Maji, that this is more that the rational knowledge. It's more
Exactly.
like what you were saying before, the yes or no. Okay,
Yes.
Is this correct? Yes or no. Is this right? Yes or no. So it's more
Yes.
that rational side. And you were saying persons who have that strong faith or have it well placed, have those yes or no more oftenly correct than those who don't. So it's not knowledge as in just.
Yes, Srila Prabhupada, here in this translation, he's used the term those with deluded intellect. And what is this delusion? That I'm this body, I'm all the material, that matter is the source of life. This is a deluded intellect, right? And it's based in extremely rational thinking. And later on, when we start to add grahas to this, and we start to look at the grahas, we're going to see this play out. It's very fundamental. The last one is this asura bhava. Now, asura is a term that gets it's a little nebulous. We tend to think of asuras like we talk about rakshasas and yakshas as a race. Asura is a bhava, and there are asura races. So rakshasas, yakshas, they're called asuras because their tendency is to have asura bhava. Okay, and what is this asura bhava? Krishna, he goes on. He's very explicit about what this asura bhava is, and he says in the 17th chapter. I don't have it written there, but I'll just read it. He says, "Those who undergo severe austerities and penances, not recommended in the scriptures, performing them out of pride and egoism, who are impelled by lust and attachment, who are foolish and who torture the material elements of the body as well as the supersoul dwelling within, are to be known as demons." And in the chapter where Krishna is delineating the difference between the divine characteristics versus the asura characteristics, he points out that the asura mentality is based in lust. He says that everything in this world has come about by sex. Sex is the be-all and the end-all. The pursuit of desire is the fundamental basis. And that my own pursuit of desire trumps anybody else's. Krishna says how he's willing to torture the material elements of the body, right? Which means he's willing to harm other people to get to achieve his goals. He's willing to cause bodily harm, both to the body of the person and to the soul within, who is ultimately, Krishna recognizes, the super soul. He says, to torture the material elements of the body as well as the super soul dwelling within. This is an incredible statement. Incredible statement. So this asura bhava is this idea that I can do whatever I will do whatever I want to achieve what I want. Seventh house.
That 11th house, Nimai, the 11th house you were talking about before, the fulfillment of desires and when you hang out with the people to fulfill your desires, but when they become your instruments, we actually willing to use other people and exploit other people to fulfill their desires. That's when we're
absolutely
that bhava, really.
So this asura bhava person, he thinks that he's completely, this asura bhava person ultimately is one who he has in a sense, he completely identifies fully with his ripus. He doesn't recognize that he has a problem whatsoever. Notice that this Ripu is the 12th from the Asura Bhava, right? He's not recognizing this at all. He thinks, Ravana, he had no problem stealing Sita. Everyone told him ethics this, ethics that, oh, this, that. No, I want what I want and I'm going to have it, come what may. This is Asura Bhava. Now, Krishna, he hasn't said Asura. He said, we have to make this very distinct. Because the Asura, if we just go with Asura, the principle of Asura is that you pursue your desire over any other consideration. And we will see later on, we might do some videos on the evolution of the soul. And we'll see that this Asura mentality in of itself, there's fundamental points that it is very important that even Krishna, he gets to the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita is, sarva dharma parityaja, abandon everything and surrender unto me. That desire, that's a personal desire. That's influenced on sure, it's what's best, but it's actually what's best for me. And so even you see that the evolution of the soul starts with Ketu, and Ketu is traditionally given this idea that Ketu has an Asuric mentality. So it's not just Asura. We are not blanking saying, oh, the Asuras are bad. But this Asura Bhava, this sentiment of Asura, it's more than just, oh, he's an Asura. Like Krishna says, of Asuras, I'm Prahlad. Prahlad doesn't have Asura Bhava. He's an Asura, but he doesn't have Asura Bhava.
Correct.
So this Asura Bhava. Now,
it's not a position, it's not a condition, it's a nature.
It's a nature.
Attitude.
It's an attitude. And so next we're going to go to the next slides. And we're going to see the next verse that Krishna says. He says, Chatur vida bhajante mam jana sukirtinorjuna arthar jigyasu artharti jnani cha bharatarshava. Okay? Oh, best amongst the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious people engage in my devotion. The distressed, the seekers after knowledge, the seekers of worldly possessions, and those who are situated in knowledge. Now, when you look at this, notice how all of these map to the obstructing houses for the most part. If we were to go back to the first slide, you'll see those are pretty much all the houses that are marked with an O or are a special house. The only one, now Krishna, there's this word, sukritino. It's the qualifier. It's not just that, anybody who pursues knowledge or anybody who pursues worldly possessions or anybody, right? The Asuras are doing that. So what is the distinguishing feature? The distinguishing feature is this sukritina, sukrita. We even have the word sukriti. They have to have sukriti. What is this sukriti? It's the pious merit that they've accumulated by their pious activities. They have to have sukriti. So this sukriti means, he says, those pious people. Krita means action, krita. So those ones who have perfect action, who are acting in accordance with perfection, is even the more perfect way to say it. And who are desirous of wealth, or who are desirous of knowledge, or desirous of fulfilling some aim. They approach him because they recognize that actually he's the source of everything. And if you want something, you may as well go to the source. So all these people, they move in the direction that to acquire, they're trying to acquire the resources of these houses. They're acting from this, they've made the right choice somewhere along the line. And then they are pursuing what they lack. Whether it's artha arati, these 2 houses of desire, fulfillment, and wealth, right? The artha arati. He's trying to pursue this. He's defining defining meaning in his life through this pursuit of wealth. Then we have the distressed, Krishna says. Well, he actually starts with the distressed. He says, the four kinds of people engage in my devotion. Oh no, I was doing it right. The jigyasur, artha jigyasur. So he's defining himself by, he's trying to find meaning in knowledge. So we have these two houses, the fifth and the ninth, trying to find knowledge, pursuing knowledge. They want to understand, what is this absolute truth? What is the truth? I'm hungry. I want to know, what is the truth? What is the truth? Who am I? What am I? Where am I? Why am I? And in doing so, naturally, they will approach the truth, right? Then Krishna says, he says the artarti, they're trying to pursue wealth or fulfill some desire. And the last kind of people, they are struggling with suffering. They're suffering. And they say, and they're going like Gajendra. Gajendra, he was being faced with death, right? Gajendra, he was, so Gajendra is an elephant, right? And because of his, he went to the side of this great celestial lake. And while he was there sporting with all his wives and children, a giant makara came in, grabbed him by the leg. And a huge struggle ensued, right? And Gajendra, he wasn't just like your run-of-the-mill elephants. We're talking celestial, just Airavanta level kind of elephant, the king of elephants, just the king of elephants. Gajendra is his name. And he is fighting this crocodile, but because he's in the water, he is at an extreme disadvantage. And every time he tries to get to the land, the crocodile pulls him back into the water. At first, his family tries to help him, right? His wives and children are calling out and crying. But eventually, even they give up hope. Seeing that there is no hope for Gajendra and fearing for their own lives, they abandon him. And Gajendra is left flailing in the water. Eventually, because of Gajendra's sukriti from his past births, he had a moment of inspiration. And he remembered that actually there's no protection. I can't protect myself. My family can't protect me. No one can protect me. Only Vishnu, only that supreme absolute truth is capable of protecting me. So he with his trunk, he grabbed a lotus and he raised it up into the sky and he prayed. He prayed and he said, "Oh Vishnu, please come, please save me." And in that moment, Vishnu hears him as the Paramatma within his heart, and immediately he comes down on Garuda, and using the Sudarshan chakra, whoosh, he cuts the head of the crocodile. So this Gajendra, he's like a lordly person, someone who is initially he's enamored by his wealth and his position in life. But when faced with the makara, what is this makara? The jaws of death, makara. So we have this word mara, and there's a cut in the middle. It's the thing which manifests death, the jaws of death. Everyone is going to be faced with the jaws of death. And at that moment, no one can save you. When it's time to die, it's time to die. And we're seeing that in the world right now. No one can save you. You can do everything you can try, but death is there. You're in the jaws of death. No one can save you. So those people who are coming to that place and who recognize that they have no other recourse, their wealth can't save them, their family can't save them, their own ability can't save them, somehow or other I'm suffering and I don't want to suffer anymore, I'm over this. They turn to explore the truth. saying, the person who recognizes, and he finally, he realizes, I'm being tormented by these weaknesses, these enemies, they're beating me. My lust and my anger, how can I'm hurting myself. He actually recognized, I'm hurting myself. I'm hurting everyone around me. I can't control myself. You see this many times in people who, especially you'll see it extremely in cases of like substance abuse, where people have an addiction. And they are able, the addiction is so extreme. It causes such an extreme dichotomy internally that they're able to recognize that this addiction is something outside of me. This isn't me. This is something outside of me. And yet I am in the shackles of this weakness. And I don't know how to get out. Right? So like when you go to AA, one of the first is, to recognize, how do they say it? It's such a beautiful, in the 12 steps. I'm sorry for those who know it. I'm not doing it justice, but it starts with this recognition that I'm not in control and that there's some higher power that is in control. And if that somehow higher power can assist me, please assist me. So we see that as the epitome of this idea, this person who's suffering from the internal weaknesses, how they'll turn to God, right? So in looking at these two, we notice that we have this third house, so important. And that all these obstructing houses are actually the gateways to developing and pursuing faith. These 4 houses here are not the gateways. They uphold what you have. But there is some effort is required, and you have to go out and you have to pursue, well, we're going to see, you have to pursue knowledge. That the key to all of this is knowledge. And we're going to be able to see that by now looking at the planets involved.
Nimai, just one question before we go ahead.
Sure.
Is one of them, what the obstructions and the sustaining houses, thanks for, yeah, basically you have it here again in this chart. Some of them required an external element and some of them more of an internal possession and internal
okay, totally. Let's go back and let's look at this in a little more detail. So say your question again, or state your thing.
You were saying that the sustaining houses and the opposing houses, one of them, and I can't just slip my mind, so I just wanted to grab that idea again.
Okay.
One of them,
so
some of them,
the 4 sustaining houses, they're all dependent on what is called the Shakti. Okay, so we have 4 D Shaktis. We have Buddhi, comes from the Lagna.
Yeah.
Shuddhi comes from the 4th house. Vriddhi comes from the 7th house. How are you going to pursue expansion? Vriddhi means how you expand yourself. It's an interesting concept in relation to Asura Bhava.
Yeah.
And in the 10th house is Siddhi. So all of these are aspects of your own self-nature.
Okay.
Whereas the other houses, there is an external resource.
Correct.
Right? We have wealth here. And here we have spiritual practice, spiritual knowledge. And here we have a religious or a spiritual framework, as well as the framework of our beliefs that we go to from someone. Krishna says, approach a bona fide, to approach a self-realized soul and to render service unto him, to humbly inquire from him. Because such a self-realized soul, he has seen the truth. He is this jnani. We didn't actually describe this jnani. Krishna says that of the 4 kinds of persons, one of those people is those who is situated in knowledge. He's self-situated. He knows what is what. And because he knows what is what, he knows his relation to me, Krishna is saying. He knows who I am. He knows that actually I am his innermost self. I am his self-interest. That he is part of me. That person also worships Krishna. So Krishna is going to say, you have to go to this kind of person. Go to a jnani. And the best of jnanis, Krishna says in the next verse that's here in the we have 7:16 there, right? Let me go to, I'll put it, the next verse is extremely important in this regard. And I would feel remiss not to Krishna says in the next verse, he says, Tesham Jnani Nitya Yukta Eka Bhaktir Vishishyate Priyo Hi Jnani No Tyartam Aham Sacha Mama Priya. Of these, the one who is in full knowledge, the Jnani, who is always engaged in my pure devotional service, Nitya Yukta, like yoked together. He's eternally yoked. In my devotional service. Eka, in the words Krishna uses, Eka Bhaktir, means like focused devotion. Focus, I am his bhakti. The bhakti is directed only to me. Eka Bhakti. He's seeing that I am the all in all, and that all his endeavor in the devotion is directed to me. Eka Bhaktir. Then he says, for I am very dear to him and he is very dear to me. So he's saying the best of the jnanis is he who is situated in full knowledge, but more than just being situated in full knowledge, his devotion is yoked to the Supreme. Very important. So Krishna, he tells Arjuna, you should go to this self-realized soul. You have to go approach him humbly, without this ahankar. Leave that aside. This ahankar that comes here. You want to realize yourself, you're real. You really want to realize yourself. Leave this ahankar, and go and approach the self-realized soul. We're gonna go into that further by actually looking at the planets involved. We get a very, very clear picture when we start to look at the planets. So we began this conversation about faith with this idea that there was this intuition. This intuition that there's something more going on. This feeling, this unsettling dissatisfaction. So we can actually see that everything is starting with this Ketu. This Ketu, he's reversing the samsara. The reversal of samsara begins with Ketu, right? And there's a battle going on initially between Ketu, this intuition, and our rational intelligence, right? And we see this Mercury. Mercury naturally debilitates here in Pisces. Mercury, he likes everything to be he wants to be able to systematize it. He's the Lord of Virgo. He wants to be able to make sense of things. Things should make sense. He wants you to say, I need to be able to measure it. You're saying it's like this, but I don't understand. He's like a child. You know how a child, you say, well, no, we can't do this now. We have to, you try to give him, but the kid go, no. It's too much. I need to be able to make sense of it. And it needs to be tangible. It can't be this conceptual thing. You're telling me transcendent truth? What are we talking about here? Truth is truth. And it has a physical reality. And there's no, can't you say no. There's the transcendent is a truth beyond this truth. It's more true than the truth that you're looking at. And Mercury goes, wait a second. What are you talking about? I need it to be real. And K2 says, you don't know what real is, you rascal. This is what K2's saying. K2's saying, you stupid boy. How many times are you going to reap that? How many times are we going to reap this result, right? Look, Mercury is the Lord of the third. And we've already pointed out that this third house is so important. And the sixth house, right? We've started out with this Kendra. And we have an issue here because without right action, without addressing these weaknesses that are arising from ego, how are we gonna pursue? And Ketu is the first one. He says, hey, smash it. Notice that Ketu, Mercury, if you look at if we were to to consider tattva. Like we look at the tattva of the planets, Mercury is earth tattva. And Ketu is Ganapati, Ganesha. He is the presiding deity of the Pancha Devata. He's the presiding deity of the earth tattva. That earth tattva, this need for reality, is the obstruction. And Ganapati is the one, Ganesha is the one who removes that obstruction. And this Ketu is fighting this. He says, you stupid boy. How many times are we going to read? How many times are you going to misuse your energy? Don't you know? You're so young. You don't remember how many times, but I was there. I've done this all before. We've already suffered this. We've already lost this way. We've already done this. I don't want to do this anymore. And he smashes the Mercury. Smashes it. Smashes. And when the Mercury finally gives in, he asks the question, well, what is it? If the truth wasn't what I thought it could be, and I can't quite measure it, but there's got to be some way for me to understand this. There's got to be some way. And he has this self-inquiry. Now we have Jupiter, right?
Which is exactly what you were talking about before, when the acknowledgement of the weakness in that big
acknowledgement of the weakness. That actually I've gotten myself into this mess over and over again. I keep making a mess of this whole thing, and I just don't, what is going on? What is this all for? Right? Going round and round and round. We could say we're going round and round the Rasi chart. What the heck is this for? Right? This comes right after the 11th house, where you try to pursue all your desires. You've even achieved your desires and still you're not happy. Right? What is it for? What is the point? And when he finally genuinely asks, what is the point? Then you have Jupiter. Right? Now, this is very important because this Jupiter here is actually Chaitya Guru. He's the Guru. Chaitya Guru, we're talking Akhanda Guru. Okay? He is Paramatma. So most of the time we have this, you get taught or you hear that the sun is Paramatma. He's Atma, Paramatma. And in tradition, we don't learn that way. We actually make a slight distinction. And we use the term Sarvatma to describe the sun. Now, people could say this is splitting hairs, but there's a very, very gentle nuance to the description, and why the two names, though on one hand you could say are synonymous, they express a different concept. Sarvatma is the all-pervasive nature of being. Sarvatma. How the sun is casting light and spreading light. He's diffusing being throughout the universe. He's the source of consciousness of everything. He is the fundamental, basis of everything. Sarvatma. And it's a concept of all pervasive Atma. Paramatma is actually one step deeper. Now, Sarvatma is you can say is Paramatma because he is Paramatma, but it's more like the totality of Atma. It's the totality of Atma. Now, Paramatma is one step further. In the sun is like, if you look at the trinity of being, they describe that the supreme absolute is threefold. It's Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. It's always these three things, simultaneous and forever. Okay? So Brahman is the totality of consciousness. Paramatma, that consciousness, has a locus. It's the self of that all-pervasive consciousness. It's the intrinsic being of that being.
So the Sarvatma is the sun. And the
Sarvatma is the sun, and you would accurately describe him as Shiva. Sadashiva Sarvatma. And there's places in the Bhagavatam when they're talking about Lord Shiva, and they call him Sarvatma. Paramatma, within the context of the world, is he's the, you know how we go Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, Kshirodakshai Vishnu, like that. So you have this Chaturvyuha of Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. And the Aniruddha is that Paramatma. So he's the individual. So the analogy that's always given is there's two birds sitting on a tree. One bird is eating the fruits, and one bird is just the witness. That bird who's just the witness and who's always trying to guide the bird who foolishly is eating the fruits of the tree of life. That bird is Paramatma, and he's known to all as your conscience. And he is that Jupiter. He guides you. He gives you intuitive knowledge. He directs you in the right way. He helps the sincere to pursue what they need. And he is the Lord of the ninth, right? He manifests externally to those who are not yet fully able to recognize him internally as guru, as your teachers. But we don't have to get fancy about this. We don't have to say it's a swami or anything like that. But literally, anyone who shares with you knowledge, and especially transcendental knowledge, is a representative and a manifestation of guru. Now, the enemy, the first, we have a serious enemy, very serious enemy. If we can slightly move this for a second, or maybe I'll put it down here. Notice how both the 11th house and the 6th house are co-lorded by Rahu. And both of these houses have the significant ability to obstruct your progress. This Rahu is the shadow of the sun. It is the negative byproduct of self-identification with matter. The shadow touches sun. You can't see a shadow unless it hits something. When it comes in contact with matter, now we have a shadow. So when consciousness projects onto this shadow is touching of matter, we have this false conception. And this Rahu is the strong pursuit of desire, this egoistic pursuit of desire, this rapacious lust. He's the 10-headed dragon.
In the 11th house, it's the pursuit of that selfish desire. But also in the 6th house, it's that shadow that there is no weakness. I have no weakness.
Yep. This Rahu. Initially, this Rahu and Mercury are kind of like friends. Kind of like friends. This Rahu, he's saying, "Oh, come on, look, they're in trines here, and then they co-lord together, but notice how it's an 8th, right? And this is a 6th. So actually, Rahu is an enemy to Mercury. He's not actually Rahu. He doesn't have Mercury's best interests at heart. This prince is naive. This Mercury prince, he's so naive, and he's listening to Rahu. Rahu saying, "Yeah, it's okay. You can go outside the bounds of our history. All these are just social constructs. Marriage, what is marriage? Right? What is marriage? At the end of the day, don't you want to be happy? Right? Don't you want to be happy?" He's telling Mercury. Don't you want to enjoy yourself? Life is to be enjoyed. And what is the basis? Oh, right. Now, Venus is very interesting because Venus actually, in both cases, is in houses that potentially sustains. And Venus exalts in the 12th. What this shows is that the highest enjoyment and is actually in line with the 12th. The highest enjoyment, it is something that precedes you. It is called prahlad. It is the pleasure within. Prahlad, right? And so Venus, although on a materialistic level, initially Venus, you could say, yeah, by the pursuit, Mercury's learning from the pursuit of pleasure. You know, we see in the story of Bali Maharaj, Venus is like this materialistic guru. He's no, this is how we're gonna further our samsara. But even Bali, who is this Mercury, in fact, even Bali, he learns that actually his highest interest and his highest self-pleasure is actually to surrender to this Jupiter, Vamana. And that the greatest pleasure that there is it comes from this self-sacrifice. This is the story of Parshuram. And that once you've actually learned the beauty of self-sacrifice, that you get to enjoy a pleasure that knows no bounds. It is unlimited in every single way. In fact, Venus debilitates here in this limited field.
Interesting.
This limited field is not a nice place for Venus. The real place for Venus is in the unlimited causal self. In the pleasure that is derived from that being, from yourself. So in time, this Venus actually is, in one sense, Mercury through experience will actually learn, no, wait a second, it's actually very relishable, this faith. So
Nimai, if I can recap just to see where you were. We started with that point of the Mercury.
We started with the battle
down to the planets. The K2, yeah, the K2 Mercury battle. The K2 is trying to tell that silly boy, we've done this before. You can't rationalize the knowledge
notice
actually
how K2 is the Lord of the 8th, right? K2 is there at every death. He knows. He already knows everything you've gone through. He's already suffered everything.
This path we know, or this path in, and it's in that 8th house.
And he's indignant.
He
has no patience. He has no tolerance for this petulant boy. He has no tolerance for this boy, Mercury.
And once that Mercury accepts that weakness, okay, so I can't. So how? So then we refer to that Jupiter, which is that more personal aspect, not the all-pervasive Sarvatma, but the Paramatma, which is a slightly more personal aspect within ourselves that has that knowledge eternally.
Yes.
But then we've moved on to, so we've surrendered to that.
So now we've surrendered,
we've
right?
gone on to, but now we've got that Saturn Guru.
So first, before we've surrendered to Guru here now. Yeah. Now we have two things that comes. The story goes. So actually, we could have actually started with Mercury Rahu and said how Rahu is corrupting, and this K2 says, hey, don't listen to Rahu. That would have been a smarter starting place, actually. Then finally, K2 smashes Mercury, humbles his pride, makes him recognize that he has these weaknesses, and that if he continues with these weaknesses, that the result is always going to be suffering, right? So he says, ask yourself a real question and you might get an answer. So he asks the question and Guru says, hey, here I am, right? And then he inspires him to pursue Jupiter and to pursue higher wisdom, to better yourself, to further, this is the advanced education. This is higher education, right? The 9th house. Then from there we go. Now Mercury, he has to go and he has to act. And what is he gonna do? He's gonna go to the 3rd from there. He's gonna pursue knowledge.
So sorry, Nimai, just again to connect to your previous slide, that third house, when you say Mercury has to act, that was self-effort we had there before.
That's self-effort. He has to do it himself. Yeah. At the end of the day, the guru is giving you all the tools. Anybody who thinks that your guru is going to save you, your guru, oh, once I have my guru, no. This was explicitly explained to Vashishta, to Ram. He says of all things, the best of all things is self-effort. That self-effort is the all in all, that nothing will save you but self-effort. Because even going to the guru required self-effort. Even asking the question, what am I? Who am I? Was self-effort, right? But now it's going to the next level. You're not just basing it on some egoistic concept. Now you're basing your effort on your faith, which you've got from Guru, right? It's manifesting here. And so here you're following the instructions of your Guru. It's called parakrama. And what is it that what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to, Mercury's a student. He's supposed to study. He's supposed to become a pandita. This is Buddha Aditya Yoga. It's called Mahapandit Yoga, right? Sun and Mercury. So Mercury's supposed to go and he's supposed to study. But what is he supposed to study? He's supposed to study a transcendental knowledge. What is this sarvatma? What is this atma? What is this self? What is the ego? And in time, he will become, so it goes in time. As he discovers that, he puts that effort in, the vices will reduce, right? That's the fruit of that studies. The vices reduce. And when the vices reduce, all of a sudden his interactions with other people, now he's free. And without that debt, there's not so much suffering. And without so much suffering and so much obstruction, he can gain even more knowledge and more good fortune. And he can interact in the world properly, pursue the proper friends, and then finally, when faced with the ultimate reality, he can give up fully and experience self-realization and become jnani. So this becomes the beginning and the end and the beginning of the end.
Correct.
All right. Do you have any questions so far at this bit? If we've gone. Oh, I didn't talk about Saturn. There's a couple planets here that we haven't.
Saturn and Moon, actually. That's what I was going to ask. Is
Saturn,
the two
Moon,
planets that we haven't spoken about that.
Yeah, Saturn,
yeah,
Moon,
and corrected Mars. Yeah.
So Saturn, you'll find that Saturn is the Karaka for the 12th house, and he's also the Karaka for the 6th and the 8th. And when you notice here that Saturn is the Lord of the 12th from the 12th, that's very important, right? The 12th from the 12th. This Bhavan principle that you can't really achieve detachment if you don't achieve detachment, right? How can you give up everything if you are not willing to give up everything? Right? So this Saturn, he becomes he through the experience of suffering, through the experience of being frustrated and pursuing your desire. Saturn is always putting the brakes on. He's constantly putting the brakes on through the natural consequences of your actions. You acted, now you got to eat it, and that's going to obstruct. It's going to limit the purview of your life.
But also that long, just.
Yep. He is the combination of the asat. You can say he's asat. He's the untruth, but he's the consequences of the untruth that you lived. Right? From this, he's the consequences. He's the one that makes you come to grips with your consequences. So he's also the Lord of the 11th. He's bringing everything, right? He says this ultimately, all of this turns into what kind of physical manifestation of your faith, which again goes back to the very beginning. The Krishna says, according to your faith, you are that faith. And you will manifest that faith. That faith is verily you. This is This is where your beliefs become more than conceptual, right? So important right now. We're experiencing Jupiter moving through Capricorn. And we are experiencing the reality of everything that we believe in. Do we believe in universal healthcare, or do we not believe in universal healthcare? Or do we believe that everyone should just go it alone? Or do you think that actually we could do this together and we'd be better off if we help each other? What do you believe will manifest now? Because Jupiter is in Capricorn. And interestingly, if we went back to that chart of all the houses of places of who approaches faith and who doesn't, right now in the world, every single one of those houses, I've gone forward. Every single one of those houses is activated. Every single person on some way or another is fully aware of suffering, death, the lack of wealth, the lack of ability to achieve anything, to get anything. Everyone is experiencing that. And so this point in time is actually uniquely special. It's a unique opportunity for all of us to ask that question, what is this all about? And going back to, so we have Saturn. Saturn is, he's ultimately very, you could say favorably inclined towards the 12th house in that regard, because he is really pushing you. He is Kala. And on that level, he's a kind of guru, Mahakala, great time, Bhairava, the destroyer of everything, including ignorance. And Bhairava destroys, Shiva in that way. When we look at Saturn as a Tattva Devata, you see Shiva, you see Rudra. And so this Rudra, this Mahakala, he's destroying everything. Everything is destroyed, including your ignorance. He's destroying it all in such a way that you can finally make that final leap, and you can give up this idea that I'm an independent existence. Mars is your capacity, and he's this capacity, and he's the strength to achieve what you're doing.
The impetus, isn't it?
And he's kind of confused. He's kind of like Mercury in the sense that there's a logic to him. He's very methodical, and he exalts in Capricorn, right? He wants to get things done, and he's real sick of this dying. He really doesn't want to die. So we have this tamasic survival. This is, I don't want to, no dying, no death for anybody. We're going to build a fortress, and we're going to have armies, and we're going to fight wars, but you're not coming over here and going to kill me, right? And at the same time, there's some, he's representing he's one aspect of the self, because he's this fire, he's this Agni. And he's this individual spark. And so when he goes to the 12th house, he loses all he loses all the illusion of this need to fight. It's not a very comfortable place for Mars, in fact, but it's also his friend. Jupiter is a friend of Mars. So when Mars goes to Pisces, generally, Mars becomes a pacifist, because he realized that there's no reason to fight. And when he's properly engaged, he's the Karaka of the third. He's the one that's giving strength for you to achieve anything. So he becomes very important in that regard. So in that way, now
again, that self-effort.
We have addressed all the planets. Now, we're probably not going to, well, I know we're not going to get a chance to really in detail go through how you would actually functionally use this. We will go through some charts, and we'll give some small.
Can you imagine briefly the moon?
The moon. So the moon is your subjective experience in this regard. You can say it's your mind, and you can say it's your emotions, but the mind really is your subjective experience. Everybody is experiencing the world via the mind. No one is interacting with a truly objective reality. Everyone's reality is being filtered through the mind. And so the moon is extremely pivotal. And you'll see that the moon is, just like the sun is automatically in the obstruction category, the moon naturally wants to assist. The moon naturally knows, deep down, knows that there is an experience beyond this experience. and that I am a reflection. The moon knows. And so the moon is fully at friends with Jupiter. You know, the Gajjakeshari yoga is the combination of moon and Jupiter. And Ketu has a unique relationship with the moon because the Ketu is actually the shadow of the moon, just as Rahu is the shadow of the sun. So when the moon's light or the experience, subjective, as soon as the subjective experience happens, you have aversion. You have aversion. So this Ketu is this idea of aversion. He's averse. He's like, I'm over this. I don't want to do that. I don't want to experience this. I don't want to experience that. And the moon is the lens that is directly impacted by gunas. The planets can be, they have the guna qualities and so on and so forth. But this moon is directly being impacted by the gunas. So this moon is very important. Now, we started the conversation with Krishna's statement. And so it really, and we've told the story beginning really from the point where Jupiter and Mercury have the conversation. Arjuna himself, he was having a crisis of faith at that moment in time when the whole battlefield was arrayed and he had a good look at it, that Kurukshetra. He was overwhelmed with what should he do. And he couldn't make a decision because in that moment, he didn't know what he believed. And so he addressed Krishna. He said, "Oh, Madhusudana." Right? We started the sixth house, Shadrupus, was this Madha, this delusion as the root of all problems. That Madha, we get the word Madhu. It's an extension of that. It's like the embodiment of that. It's a cool word because on one hand it means honey, right? Madhu. It's like the sweetness. So it implies that you are absorbed in the sweetness of the delusion, Madhu. Not only are you in delusion, but you're loving it.
Yeah, very much.
So Arjuna, he asks Krishna, he calls him, "O Madhusudana." He says, there's three names he uses. He says, "O Madhusudana, O Janardana, O Govinda." These three names are so pivotal in understanding Arjuna's frame of mind. And Arjuna, he was uniquely qualified to ask the question because he's Arjuna. Arjuna means, well, it means white, literally, but it implies someone whose actions are completely pure. And therefore, he's stainless, white. And so because he was stainless, because he is Sukritina, he had Sukriti, on that point, he didn't want to act one way or he didn't want to act the other way. He was completely confused. So rather than, he shut down completely. And he said, I can't fight. Oh, Madhusudana, oh Janardana. Janardana, Madhusudana means the killer of that Madhu demon, that asura of self-deceit. And Janardana means the upholder of the jana, of the people. That means he has everybody's best interest at heart, not just his own. Someone who's looking beyond himself, someone who's truly kind, Janardana. And ultimately, it indicates that he's Paramatma, because the one who is upholding everyone is, Krishna says, everyone rests on me like pearls are strung on a thread, is that Janardana. He's that inner guide. And Govinda means he who gives pleasure to the cows and the senses, or you can say to your mind. Everyone is pursuing Arjuna. He said, I don't know what to do because every which way I look, I only see suffering. If I act and I kill everyone, I kill all my family, my teachers, my gurus, my friends, everyone that I've ever known is on this battlefield. And I don't see an end in which I'm going to enjoy myself. Because if I kill them all and I have their blood on my hands, and who's going to be at the feast? And if I don't kill them, am I breaking Dharma? What is the Dharma? What do I do? He says, he becomes completely confused, right? Karpanya dosha. Pahata svabhava. Very. Prichamitvam dharma samuda cheta. Yashreya shanishtitam bruhi tanme shishyaste ham sadimam tvam prapanam. And ultimately, he says, now I am confused about my duty, and I have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. 6th house. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple, your Shishya, Mercury, and I soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So in our tradition, we see the combination of Jupiter and Mercury. We call it Bhagavad Gita Yoga. It's when the intellect is guided by transcendental knowledge, and it awakens everything in the soul. Bhagavad Gita is an incredible manual on every level, including Jyotish, which we're showing today. And these names, especially Madhusudana, is fundamental. So we have the last slide, what do we do, right? So you have this 12th house mantras that are specific for the 12th house. And the word mantra itself, it implies that it's a protector of the mind, the man, right? We're protecting the 12th house, this origin of the mind. We're protecting the gunas. Krishna says, according to the guna, sattvanurupa. We want to raise our sattva. We want to become fully aware, not a little bit aware. We want to be fully aware. So there's one mantra. It's called the Ugra Madhusudana mantra. Why is it Ugra? We're worshiping Vasudeva. He's not a terrific demon. The Ugra is that this mantra, it is uncompromising in its it's uncompromising on giving enlightenment. It is the mantra of enlightenment. It is Bhagavad Gita in a mantra form. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You'll notice that there are 12 syllables. So it directly impacts the 12th house. And it removes the darkness of ignorance. Vasudeva. Vasudeva, this name Vasudeva is like the light of life. Or enlightenment, the enlightenment of enlightenment. Vasudeva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Even we have four words there, even 4 malas of this Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya is very capable of removing all kinds of doubt. Now, second mantra. In the beginning, we talked about how if you were to look, you would see that the D60 chart, the entrance point for the D60 chart, is this 12th house. So we have another mantra. Now this is called the Maha Mantra, and it's the king of all mantras. In the Kali Santarna Upanishad, it's described to Narada that by this mantra, you reverse the flow of time, right? You have this Shodasa Kala, these 16 kalas. And by these 16 words, we are removing the influence of time. This mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's called the benediction moon. It's all powerful. It has everything. It is the complete mandala of reality. And this mantra has the unique ability to satisfy the heart. So I give these 2 mantras to you, Leo, and to everyone to use and to help you to begin or end your journey into faith. If you like, you can join us in the next video. We're going to look at a few example charts, and we might see some of these, see how practically some of these are being put together. thank you everyone very much for joining us. Do you have any questions, Leo, since we're just wrapping up this portion of this meeting?
Oh, I love it. I love it how Nimai, you presented us basically the Bhagavad Gita, how it's present there in Jyotish, not only as a cosmic reality, but it's beyond that, a spiritual reality that we're all living in and then trying to become aware of. I mean, if we're lucky to have some of that motivation and get to that point of that sixth house of acknowledging, I think I don't want to keep doing this the same way. It's leading me to the same point. I do have an issue here. What is it about? What is it? And just open out to that query. I think most of your Bhagavad Gita verses have come from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, at least of that reading, just an acknowledgement of that version of the Bhagavad Gita. But also I really appreciate it. And also then now you culminate this presentation with a couple of mantras to help us get to that point of acknowledging that state of being of where we need to receive that information and engage in that spiritual practice. I'm looking forward to seeing then how we
put this together.
That Argala process that you were explaining, and looking at all the houses and the sustainers and the obstacle houses through charts. So if you can guide us to some charts of people, that would be amazing to see it working. And
of course,
we can then
the subject gets, we're basically, because like Krishna said, it manifests reality. So in a sense, in order for us to really fully explore faith to its pinnacle, we'd have to explore all of Jyotish, because it's all there to be used to understand the faith. So it's not that there's like one or two techniques, but having said that, we can look at, especially in extreme examples, where either someone is having a very intense experience by which then they develop strong faith, or someone has gone from a position of strong faith and then lost their faith and become an apostate. In both those cases, we can see some very key ingredients. And so my plan was to look at 4 charts where you have 2 charts of people that had revelatory experiences and then took up faith. And then we have 2 charts of individuals who were in positions of faith, who were maybe born with tradition, but then life has thrown them a curveball and they've become confused on what is truth and what's not truth, and is there any truth, these type of things. So I really want to thank you, Leo, for being here with me today.
I look forward to being invited to the next video.
And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I hope that it brought some value to your life and a nice repose within the context of what's going on around us. And I hope that if you liked it, that you'll like it down below, and that you'll subscribe to the channel, and that we can explore Jyotish together in the future. Thank you very much. Namaste. How do we? Sorry.